Let me ask you a question. How many dreams have you buried under the weight of someday? How many times have you whispered to yourself, I want success, while doing absolutely nothing to design it? See, here's the brutal truth. No one wants to hear success doesn't respond to wishes. It responds to plans. Wishing is passive. Planning is powerful. And if you're stuck waiting for the right moment, the perfect opportunity, or a sign from the universe, you'll wait forever. Life doesn't give you what you want. It gives you what you're prepared for. So today, I want to challenge every part of your comfort zone. I want to break the illusion that success is something you stumble into. It's not. You architect it. You engineer it. You build it brick by brick with precision and intention. Let's talk about how. Most people move through life in a fog, wishing for something better without ever stopping to define what better actually looks like. They say they want more money, more time, more freedom, but they never get specific. And that's where the failure begins. You see, clarity is not optional. It's the starting line. Without it, you're wandering in circles, mistaking motion for progress. The brain needs a target. It's like a heat-seeking missile. It needs something to lock onto. Without that clear target, all your effort disperses. You end up working hard, but going nowhere. The reason most people never achieve what they want is because they never identify what that is in concrete terms. They confuse vague desires with real goals. I want to be successful. What does that mean? How much income? What lifestyle? What measurable result defines success for you? Until you have a clear image, you're just chasing a shadow. High achievers think in vivid detail. They don't operate on hope. They don't leave their future to chance. They write it down. They describe it clearly. They define it in numbers, timelines, and outcomes. There's power in writing your goals. Neuroscience confirms it. When you write your goals by hand, you activate different parts of your brain. It moves your desires from abstraction to action. It sends a signal to your subconscious mind that says, this matters. And when your subconscious gets involved, things begin to shift beneath the surface. You start seeing opportunities you once ignored. You begin attracting people, resources, and circumstances that align with your vision, not by magic, but by focus. Your brain becomes a magnet for alignment when you know what you're looking for. Clarity is more than knowing what you want. It's knowing why you want it. That emotional fuel is what powers your consistency. A goal without emotional connection is weak. It's easily abandoned. When your vision is tied to something meaningful, freedom for your family, impact in your community, mastery in your craft, it becomes non-negotiable. You don't let distractions pull you off track because your clarity becomes a compass. It tells you where to go and what to say no to. It simplifies your decision-making and multiplies your energy. Every minute you spend getting clearer is a minute invested in your future. Sit with your thoughts. Reflect. What does your ideal life look like 5 years from now? What would you do every day if money were no issue? Who do you want to become? These questions aren't just motivational fluff. They're strategic planning prompts. They give your actions direction. They make your time matter. People don't burn out because they work hard. They burn out because they work hard without purpose. They wake up busy but not fulfilled, driven but not directed. And it's clarity that fixes that. It puts meaning behind motion. When you wake up with purpose, discipline becomes easier. You stop dragging yourself through the day. You move with urgency, not stress, with precision, not chaos. Even your setbacks become easier to manage when you have clarity. Failure doesn't shake you as much when you know where you're headed. You don't spiral into doubt because your direction is strong. You recalibrate, not retreat. You pivot, not panic. That's the hidden power of clarity. It gives you internal stability in a chaotic world. It's a shield against distraction and a weapon against doubt. And let's be honest, clarity isn't something you find once and forget. It's something you revisit constantly. You refine it, you sharpen it. The clearer you are, the faster you move. Write your goals down every morning if you have to. Not because you forgot them, but because you're reinforcing them. Repetition is reinforcement. Every time you write that goal, you're carving it deeper into your identity. People talk a lot about confidence, but true confidence doesn't come from fake affirmations or surface-level positivity. It comes from clarity. When you know exactly who you are, what you want, and where you're going, your confidence becomes unshakable. Because you believe in magic, but because you've got a map. And once you've got a map, you stop drifting. You start driving. You don't just wake up hoping to succeed. You wake up with a blueprint. You move like someone who's already won, because clarity makes the outcome inevitable. When most people set goals, they stop at the surface. They say they want to lose weight, make more money, write a book, start a business. But then they get stuck, overwhelmed by the gap between where they are and where they want to be. That's because they haven't taken the time to break the dream down into a real plan. They haven't reverse engineered the process. And without that process, the goal remains abstract. Something they think about often, but act on rarely. Success doesn't come from declarations. It comes from design. The people who win are the people who map out every step, anticipate obstacles, and execute with clarity. Reverse engineering is the discipline of working backward from your desired result to where you are now. It starts by defining the outcome in concrete terms, breaking it down into milestones, then translating those into daily or weekly actions. It's how engineers build bridges, how authors complete books, how athletes train for the Olympics. They don't just say, I want to win. They identify what winning looks like, then they reverse every detail until they arrive at step one. That's how big dreams become doable. Imagine you want to build $1 million business. Saying that sounds exciting, but it's not enough. You need to ask, what product or service will I offer? Who is my customer? What's my price point? How many units do I need to sell per month, per week, per day? What platforms will I use? What marketing strategy will I follow? What does my sales process look like? What resources, skills, or partnerships do I need to acquire? Each question takes you deeper into the structure of the goal. It turns it from a fantasy into a framework. Reverse engineering also exposes flaws in your assumptions. It shows you whether your timeline is realistic, whether your resources are sufficient, and whether your strategy aligns with the result you're chasing. Instead of rushing forward blind, you get to plan smart. You see the terrain before you enter the battlefield. And that clarity gives you power. It allows you to adjust proactively, not reactively. Most people fail not because they're lazy, but because they're unprepared. They set vague goals, skip the planning, and when problems arise, they panic. The person who reverse engineers knows what's coming. They're ready. It's not enough to know what you need to do. You must know when you need to do it. That's why timelines are critical. Without deadlines, plans have no urgency. Your brain treats them as optional. But when you attach specific dates to your milestones, your brain starts to organize your actions accordingly. You create pressure, not the kind that stresses you out, but the kind that focuses you. It keeps you honest. It keeps you moving. Without deadlines, you'll drift. With them, you execute. Another benefit of reverse engineering is that it allows you to celebrate progress. When you break your goal into pieces, you can track completion. You can see the chapters being written, the dollars being earned, the weight being lost. Visual progress fuels momentum. You no longer feel lost in the middle of an impossible task. You feel like you're winning every week, and that psychological shift is everything. Small wins compound. They give you energy to keep going, especially when motivation fades. The best part, you don't have to be perfect, you just have to stay on the path. When your actions are structured around a reverse engineered plan, you don't waste time wondering what to do next. You're not improvising your way through life. You're executing a sequence. And if something doesn't work, you tweak it. You adjust one piece of the machine, not the whole machine. That kind of control builds confidence. You stop feeling like success is a matter of luck or timing. You know it's a matter of execution. This process also teaches discipline. When you commit to a sequence, you learn to respect the process. You realize that every shortcut costs more in the long run. Reverse engineering humbles you. It shows you that success isn't sexy, it's systematic. It's not about massive breakthroughs. It's about structured consistency. That's where the transformation happens. You want to change your life? Start by changing your method. Don't just dream big. Plan deep. Identify the finish line. Walk backward until the path reveals itself. Break the path into steps, attach those steps to dates, and then move with precision. Do it even when you don't feel like it. especially when you don't feel like it, because that's the real test. Not whether you can get excited, whether you can stay committed. Reverse engineering makes commitment easier. It simplifies the journey. It turns confusion into clarity. And clarity, when paired with execution, creates results. Most people believe that success is about feeling inspired, about waking up motivated and ready to crush the day. Motivation is fragile. It's unpredictable. It fluctuates with your mood, your energy, the weather, or a bad night's sleep. And if your path to success depends on waiting until you feel like it, you'll never get far. The people who rise to the top, the ones who build something meaningful and lasting, don't rely on motivation. They rely on discipline. They operate on principle, on preference. They do what needs to be done, whether they feel like it or not. Discipline is the real separator. Talent is common. Intelligence is widespread. Even good ideas aren't rare. What's rare is the ability to show up consistently and execute, especially when there's no applause, no audience, no adrenaline. That's when most people fade. They start strong, full of excitement, but the moment the effort becomes boring or painful or inconvenient, they quit. They tell themselves it's not the right time, or maybe they weren't meant for this. But the truth is they never built the discipline to carry them through the valleys. Discipline is about doing the work when the mood is gone. It's about honoring the commitment you made to yourself long after the feeling that created it has disappeared. That's not just mental toughness. It's strategy. Because every time you follow through, even when you don't want to, you strengthen your identity. You begin to see yourself differently, not as someone who tries, but as someone who follows through. That identity shift is powerful. It becomes the foundation for long-term transformation. Building discipline starts with your environment. You don't rise to the level of your goals. You fall to the level of your systems. If your phone is full of distractions, your schedule is chaotic, and your sleep is irregular, you're setting yourself up to fail. You need to engineer an environment that makes discipline easier. Lay out your clothes the night before. Prep your meals. Set timers. Block social media. Automate your reminders. Make the disciplined choice the default, not the exception. And understand this: discipline isn't about rigidity or punishment. It's about alignment. It's about aligning your daily actions with your deepest values. Every disciplined decision is a declaration: I will not betray the future I want. Every time you skip the shortcut, every time you push through discomfort, you're reinforcing that standard. And standards build lifestyles. You don't get what you want. You get what you're willing to tolerate. So raise your standards and back them with action. It also helps to narrow your focus. You can't be disciplined in everything at once. Start with one keystone habit, something small but meaningful, and commit to mastering it. Wake up at a consistent time. Exercise for 30 minutes. Write 500 words a day. Track your expenses. Whatever it is, make it non-negotiable. Once that habit becomes part of your identity, layer on the next one. Stack discipline like bricks, slowly and deliberately. Over time, those habits compound. What once felt difficult becomes automatic. That's the beauty of discipline. It becomes easier the more you do it. You'll also need to reframe discomfort. Most people avoid discipline because it feels hard. But the pain of discipline is nothing compared to the pain of regret. You can suffer the temporary inconvenience of effort now, or endure the permanent sting of what could have been. Discipline is short-term sacrifice for long-term freedom. It's not a prison, it's a passport. It buys you options, leverage, and control. The more disciplined you become, the more power you hold over your time, your health, your income, your impact. And when you slip, and you will, don't use it as an excuse to spiral. One missed workout, one late start, one bad day doesn't erase your progress. Discipline isn't perfection, it's resilience. It's getting back on track faster every time you fall, learn from the mistake, reset, and keep moving. Consistency isn't about never failing. It's about refusing to stay down. Ultimately, discipline is the price of freedom. The undisciplined are slaves to their impulses. They do what feels good now and pay for it later. The disciplined make the hard choice now so they can live with pride, power, and peace later. Success doesn't come to the most excited. It comes to the most consistent. And consistency is born from discipline, not desire. You build the discipline one action at a time, One decision at a time, one day at a time. Not when it's convenient, not when it's easy, but when it's necessary. Every time you choose discipline, you take one more step away from who you used to be and closer to who you were meant to become. In the pursuit of success, many people make the mistake of celebrating effort more than outcomes. They confuse activity with achievement. They get caught up in being busy, in doing more, in checking off tasks from a long to-do list, and yet they wonder why they aren't getting the results they want. The truth is, trying hard doesn't guarantee anything. You don't get rewarded for effort, you get rewarded for results. And that means your ability to analyze, measure, and adjust based on outcomes is far more important than how much energy you expend. Real progress begins when you stop asking, how hard did I try? And start asking, what result did I produce? This shift in thinking is uncomfortable at first. It forces you to take a hard look at what's working and what's not. It pushes you to hold yourself accountable, not just for doing things, but for doing the right things. Because not all work is equal. Some actions move you forward. Others keep you stuck in motion. Until you develop the skill of measuring outcomes, you won't know the difference. It's easy to get emotionally attached to your routines. You can spend hours perfecting a logo, editing a video, reading another book, tweaking your website, and still make no meaningful progress. Why? Because those actions may feel productive, but they're not tied directly to your core outcome. Safe. They're comfortable. And they give the illusion of forward movement, but illusions don't build results. Results come from action that is uncomfortable, uncertain, and focused on impact. You need to develop the discipline of reflection. Weekly, even daily, you should ask, what did I do today? What did it produce? Was that result aligned with my goal? If not, why not? What will I change tomorrow? This is how top performers operate. They don't just act, they evaluate. They don't wait for feedback from the outside world. They create their own internal scoreboard. They review their performance the way an athlete watches game tape, not to shame themselves, but to sharpen their edge. This process isn't about being critical. It's about being honest. You don't grow by pretending you're doing well. You grow by recognizing where your approach is flawed and adjusting quickly. You need to detach your identity from your effort. Just because you worked hard doesn't mean you're on the right path. You could be climbing the wrong mountain. That's why reflection and results must guide your decisions, not just emotion or effort. The feedback loop you create through this kind of analysis is invaluable. It trains your brain to look for patterns. You start to see what strategies yield progress, which routines improve your focus, which actions actually move the needle. Over time, you begin to work smarter, not just harder. You eliminate waste. You redirect energy. You create systems that produce consistently. That's the foundation of mastery, not random bursts of inspiration, but disciplined refinement of what works. It's also important to track your progress visually. Data keeps you grounded. Whether it's fitness, finances, sales, writing, or learning, find a way to measure your output. Numbers don't lie. They don't care how tired you were or how many hours you put in. They simply reflect reality. And reality is where growth happens. Once you start seeing data clearly, you can't hide behind excuses anymore. You either hit the mark or you didn't. That level of honesty may be uncomfortable, but it's also empowering. It puts you in control. And remember, feedback isn't failure. A result you don't like isn't a reflection of your worth. It's information. It's a sign that something in your process needs to change. Winners don't fear this feedback. They crave it. They seek it out. They ask mentors, coaches, clients, and even themselves, how can I get better? Where am I blind? What am I missing? They treat every failure as a lesson, every shortfall as data. That's why they grow faster. They're not attached to being right. They're committed to getting it right. Too many people stay stuck in the same cycle for years, repeating the same strategies, hoping for different results, convincing themselves that persistence alone will eventually pay off. But without reflection, persistence turns into stubbornness. Without data, effort becomes guessing. You can't afford to guess your way to greatness. You need to study your results like a scientist. Test, measure, adjust, repeat. That's how you grow. You want to win? Then stop applauding yourself for trying. Start demanding outcomes. Learn from every result, good or bad. Use that information to fine-tune your strategy, sharpen your habits, and close the gap between where you are and where you want to be. That's how champions are made, not through raw effort, but through refined execution. At some point, everyone is presented with a choice. Continue blaming external factors for where you are, or take full responsibility for everything in your life. The moment you choose the latter, everything changes. That's the point where growth begins. Because as long as you're pointing fingers, you're giving away your power. You're waiting for someone else to change so you can feel better. You're hoping the economy improves, your boss notices you, your partner understands you, or the world just gets a little easier. But life doesn't work that way. Waiting makes you passive. Blaming makes you powerless. The only real power you have is the power to take full ownership of your results, your actions, and your future. Taking 100% responsibility doesn't mean everything is your fault, but it does mean everything is your problem. You may not have chosen the hand you were dealt, but you choose how you play it. You may not have caused every challenge you face, but you decide how you respond. This level of personal responsibility is rare because it requires maturity. It's uncomfortable. It forces you to stop playing the victim and start playing the game like someone who intends to win. And it's easy to spot the difference between those who embrace it and those who don't. The responsible person asks, "What can I do?" The irresponsible person asks, "Why is this happening to me?" Every excuse is a boundary between you and your potential. Every time you say, "I can't," because you reinforce that limitation in your identity, it becomes your story. You repeat it enough and it becomes your truth. I can't focus. I'm too old. I didn't grow up with money. No one supports me. And each of these stories, while they may feel justified, are still shackles. They may be true in part, but they don't need to define you. Because as long as you keep explaining your situation, instead of changing it, you stay stuck. One of the most liberating shifts you can make is to see your current circumstances as raw material, not a final sentence. Where you are right now is not who you are. It's just a starting point. And you're not stuck unless you decide to be. Taking responsibility means asking better questions. Instead of who's to blame, ask, what's within my control? Instead of why can't I? Ask, how can I? Instead of waiting for the situation to change, you change your strategy, your attitude, your effort, or your environment, because that's what ownership looks like in practice. It also means owning your mindset. You're not responsible for every thought that pops into your head, but you are responsible for which ones you feed. You choose whether to focus on fear or possibility, problems or solutions. And this choice becomes your emotional baseline. People who consistently blame others tend to live in frustration. People who own their mindset, even during difficulty, tend to live with purpose. Responsibility gives you emotional leverage. It lets you steer your mental state rather than being a victim of it. This mindset of ownership also applies to time. One of the most common excuses people make is, "I don't have time." But time is the one resource every person has in equal measure. The difference isn't how much time you have, it's how you use it. When you take responsibility for your schedule, your distractions, your energy, you stop saying, "I didn't have time," and start saying, "I didn't make it a priority." That honesty stings at first, but it's empowering, because if it wasn't a priority yesterday, you can change that today. You can build a schedule that reflects your values instead of your impulses. And when things go wrong, as they inevitably will, responsibility means resisting the urge to hide behind circumstances. It means stepping up and saying, "I didn't get the result I wanted, but I own that. Now I'll learn. Now I'll adjust. Now I'll grow." It's not about perfection. It's about presence. Being fully present with your life, your choices, your results, and your direction, owning all of it. Because if you own your results, you can also own your next move. There's a quiet confidence that comes with this mindset. People who take full responsibility don't fear failure the way others do. They understand that mistakes are data. They don't hide from challenges. They meet them directly. They don't wait for external validation. They validate themselves through discipline, consistency, and growth. And most importantly, they stop waiting for someone to save them. they realize they are the ones they've been waiting for. That no one is coming to fix it, and that's okay because they're capable of fixing it themselves. That's the power of radical ownership. It's not just the foundation of success, it's the birthplace of freedom. So here's your challenge: stop wishing. Start planning today. Get a notebook, write down what you want, reverse engineer it, build the systems. Eliminate the excuses, track your progress, adjust relentlessly, execute daily. Because at the end of your life, it won't matter what you hope for, it'll only matter what you built. And if you want success, don't leave it to chance. Design it, decide it, plan it, and then live it.